Emperor. For the Empire.
Chapter 1. The Whisper Beneath, thought asterisk in the grim darkness of the far future. The mind is not a fortress. It is a wound waiting to be touched by the warp. I do not remember the first time the whisper came, only that it found me in silence, the kind that follows artillery and death. Asterisk we had been stationed on a nameless rock, a place of trenches and dust, where the sky was the same shade of gunmetal as the Emperor's mercy. Days bled into one another. Men forgot their own names. The vox crackled with broken prayers and static. Asterisk, I thought it was just the aftershock of battle, the tremor that lives inside your skull long after the cannons stop. But the whisper, it was different. It didn't echo like a sound, it breathed. At first, I ignored it. In the Guard, you learn to ignore many things: the stench of the dead, the screams that never end, the tremors that shake the ground at night. Sanity is not survival here. Faith is asterisk, and so, I told myself it was nothing. A trick of exhaustion. The Emperor testing my resolve. But the whisper didn't fade. It lingered at the edges of thought. Soft as silk, patient as rot. I couldn't make out the words, not yet, only a sense of presence. Something listening back. Asterisk when I prayed, it fell silent. When I stopped, it stirred again, as though waiting for the weakness between breaths. Asterisk, the chaplain said the warp could not touch the faithful. I believed him, until the day I began to doubt. Asterisk. We were ordered to advance on the ruins of what had once been the enemy traitors, mutants, maybe worse, had taken shelter inside. Asterisk it was routine. It was hell. Asterisk, we moved through the ash and rubble. Lasguns ready, helmets sealed, breathing the same recycled air that always tasted faintly of rust and blood. The sky burned overhead, a storm of red lightning that never reached the ground. Asterisk, I was point man. Asterisk my squad followed behind. Merrick, Jor-El, Kane, and the others. Faces without futures. We entered the first corridor. Walls cracked, symbols burned into the stone. Not Imperial script. Something else. Something alive. That was when it whispered again. Asterisk. Clearer this time. Greater than you have been heard. I froze. Thought it was Vox interference. But my cums were dead. Everyone else moved on, oblivious. The whisper came again, slower, as though savoring the moment. Asterisk, greater than you, have been heard. Asterisk, my heart hammered against the rebreather. I muttered the litany of protection words. Every guardsman learns by heart. But the whisper laughed, a soundless vibration, like something smiling inside my skull. Asterisk the walls around us seemed to breathe. The air thickened, heavy with copper and dust. My vision blurred. I stumbled forward, trying to keep pace. Asterisk Kane asked if I was all right. I told him yes. I lied. Asterisk that night, I couldn't sleep. None of us could. The ruins felt wrong. Even the shadows seemed to move with intent. Merrick joked that the place was cursed, a demon's den, he said, half laughing. No one responded. We knew better than to speak such words out loud. When I closed my eyes, I saw flashes of something else, shapes forming in the dark behind my eyelids, vast and shifting. I heard the whisper again, threading through the edges of thought. Not just a voice now, a chorus. Asterisk greater than why do you fight for them? Asterisk I opened my eyes, gasping. The others slept, or pretended to. Asterisk the whisper continued. Softer now. Asterisk greater than they send you to die in the dust, nameless, forgotten. Yet they do not hear you pray. I do. Asterisk, I wanted to scream, but no sound came. My throat felt dry, thick with ash. Asterisk, I clenched my rosary beads, tiny fragments of bone blessed by the regiment's priest, until they drew blood. The whisper fell silent again, but the silence felt worse. We fought again the next day. Asterisk, another push into the ruins. Another wave of madness unleashed upon men too tired to question why. I fired until the lasbeck hissed dry, then reloaded, hands trembling. The enemy were not men anymore, their faces torn open, skin branded with sigils that shifted like worms beneath the flesh. Asterisk, one of them screamed something, not a battle cry, not human words, and the world bent. Asterisk, for a moment. Everything around me was light, wrong light, liquid and alive, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. I felt the whisper inside it, wrapping itself around my thoughts. Asterisk, greater than you see it now. You feel it, the truth beneath the veil. I dropped my weapon. The sound of it hitting the ground brought me back. Asterisk, Kane grabbed me by the shoulder, shouting something I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. My hands were shaking, my eyes burned. The whisper had retreated again, deeper now, watching, waiting. Asterisk, when the firefight ended, I couldn't remember how many we'd killed, or how many of us were left that evening. During the rites of remembrance, I watched the chaplain burn incense over the bodies. He spoke the Emperor's words, voice steady, eyes hollow. Asterisk, I tried to pray. The words didn't come. All I heard was laughter. Greater than, do you think he hears you? He has not heard anyone in 10,000 years. Asterisk, I slammed my head against the trench wall, whispering shut up, shut up, shut up, until Jor-El dragged me away. He thought I'd lost it. Shell shock, battle fatigue, too much corpse stench and fear. Maybe he was right, but the whisper had already won something small that night. Not my soul, not yet, but my silence. It knew I would not speak of it, not to the chaplain, not to anyone. And so it grew. Days turned to weeks. I lost track of time. Asterisk, the whisper became a constant pulse, like the sound of blood in the ears. Sometimes it mimicked the voices of my comrades, Merrick, asking for rations, Jor-El calling out orders, but the words were wrong, slightly off, too soft, too knowing. Asterisk, at night, I caught glimpses in my peripheral vision, shapes standing in the fog, vanishing when I turned. Asterisk, once, I saw a shadow move against the wrong light, like a man walking in reverse. Sleep became impossible. Food tasted like dust. Asterisk. Faith became memory. Asterisk. And through it all, the whisper watched. Asterisk, you have seen the edges of truth. The veil is thin. Let go, and you will see everything. I began to wonder if maybe it was right. Not because I believed it, but because believing anything was easier than enduring the void of doubt. Asterisk, when the next bombardment came, it felt like a release. Asterisk, shells screamed overhead, tearing the earth apart. Fire and smoke filled the sky. Asterisk, I ran without knowing where, my mind blank, my body moving by instinct. I reached a crater, dropped inside, gasping. Asterisk, the whisper spoke again, calm, amid the chaos. Asterisk, greater than, do you know why they scream? Because they remember. I covered my ears. It didn't help. Asterisk, greater than, every death, every prayer, every forgotten word echoes in the warp, and I hear them all. Would you like to hear them too? The world exploded. The blast wave threw me back. I hit the ground hard. My helmet cracked. My vox sparked. Asterisk, everything went silent. No sound, no breath. Just ringing emptiness. Asterisk, then, beneath that silence came the whisper's breath. Asterisk, now you are mine to hear. I woke hours later. Or maybe days. Asterisk, the battlefield was quiet. Smoke drifted over the ruins like mourning shrouds. My squad was gone, vaporized, buried. Or worse, I was alone, and the whisper was no longer distant. It was inside. It spoke not with words, but with knowing. I felt its curiosity, like fingers running through my thoughts, peeling back layers of memory. It showed me faces, my comrades, my family, my world, all burning, all consumed. Asterisk, greater than they never mattered, it said. They were only echoes. Asterisk, I tried to remember their names. I couldn't. I tried to remember my own. Nothing came. That was when I realized what it had taken from me. Asterisk, not my faith, not my sanity, my identity. Asterisk, I wasn't a soldier anymore. I was a vessel, a voice through which something greater could whisper back. Asterisk, you have served well, it said. Now, serve truly. Asterisk, I fell to my knees in the ash. My lasgun lay broken beside me. The Emperor's Aquila insignia on my armor had cracked. The eagle's wings blackened and warped. Asterisk, the wind carried the smell of ozone and decay. I whispered one last prayer, not to the Emperor, to whatever still heard me, and something did. Greater than, you are heard. Asterisk, greater than, but that was only the beginning, the first fracture in the glass of my mind, through which the warp began to see me more clearly. Asterisk, greater than, there are places in the mind where light cannot reach. Once something speaks from there, it never stops. Asterisk, I wandered for what felt like days, or maybe hours. Time had become fluid, elastic, meaningless. The sun never moved. The sky hung still, heavy and red. I passed broken tanks, half swallowed by ash, bodies fused into the earth like roots. Some still clutched weapons, others rosaries, others nothing at all. Each face I saw was wrong. Their eyes followed me. Their lips twitched, mouthing prayers with no sound, and beneath their silence, the whisper breathed, greater than you see. They pray, but they are already mine. Asterisk, I stumbled away, clutching at my helmet as though I could crush the voice out of my skull. My breath came ragged through the filter, a mechanical gasp in an endless graveyard. Asterisk. At one point, I thought I saw Merrick, his armor blackened, his jaw missing, standing at the crest of a ridge. He raised a hand as if to call me, but when I blinked, he was gone. Only the whisper remained. Asterisk, greater than, he remembers you. They all do, but they remember differently now. Asterisk, I screamed until my throat tore, but the sound was devoured by the stillness. The warp does not echo, it absorbs. I found shelter in the ruins of a heblock. The walls were covered in words, not carved, but grown. Flesh-like tendrils forming shapes that twisted and pulsed when I looked too long. The smell of iron hung thick. Asterisk, I sat in a corner and removed my helmet. My face was slick with sweat, my skin gray under the dim light. I tried to rest, but the whisper did not allow it. Asterisk, greater than, you have begun to hear, truly, it said. The others never listen long enough. They died too soon. Asterisk, I clenched my teeth. You're not real, I muttered. You're the warp, a demon, a lie. The laughter that followed wasn't sound, it was understanding, pressed against my thoughts like a hand. Greater than real. The word means nothing here. You made me real when you began to listen. Asterisk, I stood, staggering. I served the Emperor, I said, more to myself than to it. I am his guard. I am his weapon. Asterisk, greater than, then, why has he abandoned you? Asterisk, the question hit harder than a shell. I had no answer. The next time I slept, I dreamed of Terra, or what I thought was Terra. I walked through the Imperial Palace, the great golden halls lit by dying suns, banners of the Aquila fluttering in wind that smelled of decay. Asterisk, statues of saints lined the corridor, each one weeping blood. Asterisk, at the far end stood a throne, vast, radiant, terrible. Asterisk, the Emperor sat upon it, but his face was hidden in light. Asterisk, I knelt, trembling. My lord, I said. I have failed you. Asterisk, the light pulsed. The voice that came was not his. Asterisk, greater than you, have not failed. You have been seen. I looked up. The throne was empty. The light was bleeding. Behind it stood a figure, cloaked in shadow, 1,000 eyes opening where its face should be. Asterisk, greater than you, sought him in silence, it said, but it was I who listened. Asterisk, I woke screaming, my body convulsing. My hands were slick with blood, not mine, not entirely. The walls around me were covered in new symbols, drawn in fresh crimson. I didn't remember writing them. From that day, the world began to bend. Asterisk, the ruins shifted when I wasn't looking. Doors led to places that shouldn't exist. The air shimmered like heat, and sometimes for a heartbeat I saw beyond it. Colors that had no names. Shapes that moved without form. Asterisk, and in all of it, the whisper remained constant, patient, guiding, like a priest leading a heretic into revelation. Asterisk, you are almost ready. The veil thins. You will see the truth soon. Asterisk, I stopped resisting, not because I believed, but because I was tired. Asterisk, faith requires strength. Doubt requires none. I walked where it led me. Asterisk, the trail ended at what had once been a cathedral, or what my eyes insisted was one. The walls were broken, yet the stained glass still glowed with inner light. The images were not saints, but faces, shifting, weeping, grinning, screaming. Asterisk, as I stepped inside, the whisper grew louder, not around me, within me. Greater than kneel. I obeyed. My knees hit the dust. My body moved on its own. Asterisk, before me stood an altar of bone. Upon it lay a book, its pages breathing with faint movement, like lungs. Greater than reed. I reached out. My hands trembled as I touched the cover. It was warm, alive. Symbols crawled across its surface, rearranging themselves into words I should not have understood, but I did. Asterisk. They told of creation, not by divine will, but by accident. The warp bleeding into reality, life as contamination, faith as a lie built to contain the horror of truth. Asterisk, I felt something break inside me. A soundless snap. Asterisk, greater than now you understand, the whisper said, tender as a lover. Now you see why we pity you. Asterisk, I fell back, gasping. My vision blurred. For a moment, I saw faces emerging from the floor, mouths open in silent worship. Their eyes were full of light. Asterisk, I ran. Asterisk, through corridors that twisted like intestines, through stairways that led nowhere, through shadows that reached for me like hungry hands. Asterisk, the whisper laughed, not cruelly, joyfully. Asterisk, run, if you must. It changes nothing. You cannot flee what you carry within. Asterisk, I reached the open plain again. The storm had returned, crimson lightning tearing the horizon. I collapsed to my knees, screaming at the sky. Asterisk, why me? The whisper answered gently, greater than because you listened. For a time, I believed I had died. Asterisk, everything went white, not light, but absence. I floated in it, weightless. The whisper faded to a hum. Asterisk, then shapes began to form. Memories. My mother's face. The training grounds. The first time I'd taken the oath. Each image cracked like glass, shattering into thousands of eyes. Greater than do you see now? Asterisk, what am I? I asked. Greater than you are, what all men become when truth replaces faith. I felt it then, a rush of heat through my veins. Not pain, but ecstasy. My mind expanded, stretching towards something infinite and terrible. Asterisk, I saw the galaxy as it truly was, not a map of stars, but a sea of thoughts bleeding into each other. Souls screaming, praying, merging. The warp feeding, breathing, dreaming, and at its heart, not a god, but a reflection, the sum of all belief. The Emperor, asterisk, not divine, not eternal, just louder than the rest. I screamed again, not in horror, but in revelation. Asterisk greater than now, you understand the first truth, the whisper said. Faith is noise. We are silence. When I awoke again, I was back in the ruins. My armor was gone. My flesh was marked with faint scars that pulsed with a dim red glow. Asterisk, the air shimmered when I breathed. I could still hear the world, the distant echoes of artillery, the cries of dying men, but they sounded far away. The whisper was silent now, not gone, resting asterisk in its absence. I felt hollow, like a vessel waiting to be filled. Asterisk that night, I found a mirror, a shard of broken glass, buried in the dirt. Asterisk, I looked into it, and for a moment, saw myself. Then the reflection smiled. Greater than, we are one now. Asterisk, I dropped the shard, blood running down my hand. My pulse raced. I couldn't tell if I was breathing, or if the world around me was breathing for me. Asterisk, the whisper returned, quiet, almost compassionate. Asterisk, greater than you have crossed the first threshold. You are no longer theirs. Soon you will speak for us. Asterisk, I tried to deny it, tried to remember who I was, but every name, every memory, every word of the Imperial creed slipped away like smoke. Asterisk, only one thought remained. I am heard. Asterisk, the storm broke above me. Asterisk, rain fell, black, oily, thick. It hissed against my skin. I raised my face to it, letting it wash the blood from my eyes. Asterisk, far away. I heard the sound of vengeance, imperial, unmistakable, rescue, reinforcements. I could return. I could be saved. Asterisk, the whisper said nothing. It didn't need to. Asterisk, because I realized then I didn't want to be saved. Not anymore. Asterisk, greater than every faith begins with a whisper, the voice said, fading into the thunder. But true devotion begins with surrender. Asterisk, and for the first time in my life, I felt peace. Asterisk, in the next section. The guardsman will be recovered by Imperial forces, seemingly alive, but inwardly transformed, as he re-enters structured life under interrogation. The whisper begins, using his voice to spread itself further. The infection of thought has begun. Asterisk. They found me wandering near the outer trench line. My armor was shattered, my vox long dead. I must have looked like a corpse walking. Asterisk, the medicae said, I should have been dead from exposure, radiation, and blood loss. But I wasn't. My heartbeat was steady. My wounds were closing too quickly. Asterisk, when they asked me how I'd survived, I said the Emperor protected me. They nodded, recorded it, and moved on. They didn't see the truth behind my eyes. I was taken to a field station, a prefabricated slab of metal and incense, surrounded by the stink of promethium and rot. The air was heavy with prayers broadcast over the vox-net. Asterisk, I could hear them all, every chant, every whisper of devotion bleeding into one endless sound. It was overwhelming, almost deafening. And then, beneath it all, I heard it. Asterisk, so loud, yet so empty. They shout to a corpse and call it faith. Asterisk, I closed my eyes. The whisper's tone was different now, softer, almost sympathetic. It didn't command, it observed, it understood. That frightened me more than any demon ever could. The interrogators came next, a pair of psychers in black robes, their faces hidden by iron masks. They asked me the usual questions, names, regiment, engagement, details. Asterisk, when I tried to answer, my words tangled. Time didn't make sense to me anymore. I told them the battle had never ended, that I could still hear it inside my head. Asterisk, they exchanged glances. One wrote something down. Asterisk, they think you're mad, the whisper said. They're not wrong. But madness is simply seeing more than they can bear. Asterisk, I felt a smile pull at my lips. Unbidden. Asterisk the psyker leaned forward, eyes glowing faintly through the slits of his mask. Have you seen the warp? He asked. My heart froze. Say no, the whisper murmured. Not yet. Asterisk, I shook my head. No, only death. Only the battlefield. Asterisk, he stared at me for a long moment. Then, finally, he nodded. Very well. The Emperor protects. Asterisk, does he? The voice asked, after they left. Or does he merely watch you crumble, as all his children do? Asterisk, that night, I was given a bunk and a ration pack. The taste of processed nutrient paste felt foreign, like eating something that didn't belong in this world anymore. Asterisk, the others in the barracks spoke in low tones. I could feel their minds brushing against mine faintly, like insects against glass. Every thought they had shimmered like light on water. Asterisk, listen closely, the whisper urged. You will learn their true prayers. And I did. I heard their fear of death, of failure, of heresy. I heard their doubt, buried deep beneath words of devotion. I realized then how easy it was to unmake faith, not with argument, but with understanding. Asterisk, one by one, the foundations of their belief trembled in my mind. The whisper didn't need to speak anymore. It had already taught me the language of corruption. Asterisk, when I slept, the dreams came again. Asterisk, I stood in a vast desert of skulls, stretching beyond sight. The air burned like fever. A black sun hung above me, pulsing like a wound. In its shadow stood the figure from before, the one with 1,000 eyes. You have returned, it said. Tell me, what have you learned of your kind? Asterisk, that they're afraid, I said. Afraid of what they see when they look inward. Good. Its voice was like silk dragged over razors. Asterisk, fear is the seed. Whisper to it, and it grows into faith. Whisper longer, and it grows into truth. Asterisk, the figure stepped closer. The air shimmered around it, bending in impossible ways. Asterisk, you are ready to speak as we do, when they ask you what saved you. Tell them, asterisk, tell them what? That you heard the Emperor's voice. I woke, drenched in sweat, my pulse hammering. The whisper chuckled softly in my mind. Asterisk, they will believe you, and through belief, they will hear us. Asterisk, the next morning, I was summoned to give testimony before the chaplain. He was an old man, his armor polished but worn, his skull helm hanging from his belt. The air smelled of incense and sacred oil. Asterisk, he greeted me kindly. You have endured much, guardsman. Few returned from such devastation. Asterisk, I bowed my head. By his light, I was preserved. Asterisk, indeed, he said, smiling faintly. The Emperor's grace shines brightest in the faithful. Asterisk, he asked me to recount what had happened, what I'd seen, what I'd felt. And I told him about the light that spoke, the warmth that filled me, the truth that I could not name. I said it was the Emperor. He wept. Asterisk, and in that moment, I felt the whisper's pleasure, not triumph, not malice, but satisfaction. Asterisk, see, how easy it is. One word, one lie, one faith rewritten. Asterisk, the chaplain blessed me, calling me a miracle. He said my survival would inspire others. He said I had heard the throne's breath. I almost laughed. Days passed. I was cleared for limited duty. They wanted to transfer me back to the front, to serve as a symbol of resilience. The whisper called it the perfect pulpit. And so I went. Asterisk, the trenches were as I remembered. Mud, blood, smoke. The same faces, different names. Men broken by fear, clinging to faith like it was air. Asterisk, when I spoke, they listened. When I prayed aloud, they followed. Asterisk, tell them what you heard, the whisper urged. Let them taste the peace you found. Asterisk, at first, I resisted. But then I saw how their eyes lit up when I spoke of light in the darkness. How their fears softened when I said the Emperor speaks to those who truly listen. Asterisk, it wasn't a lie anymore. Not to them. Asterisk. Now you are not merely heard. The voice murmured. You are echoed. I began to dream while awake. Shapes flickered at the edges of vision, outlines of wings, hands, faces that weren't faces. When I blinked, they vanished. But the soldiers saw them too. Asterisk, they said it was a sign that the Emperor was near. Asterisk, each prayer they whispered fed the growing hum in my skull, the same note, resonating between thought and flesh. Asterisk, we are close now, said the voice. Soon, they will hear without you. Then came the battle. The heretics struck under the cover of night, a warband of chaos cultists. The sky burned violet. The air screamed. Asterisk, in the chaos, I felt the barrier between worlds tremble. And I knew this was the moment. Asterisk, speak. The whisper commanded. Asterisk, I raised my lasgun to the sky and shouted words I did not understand. The sound was not mine. It was deeper, ancient, alive. Asterisk, the ground split. Light, black, and gold erupted outward. The cultists fell to their knees. The guardsmen screamed. Some prayed louder, and the whisper laughed. Now they all hear us. Asterisk, when the smoke cleared, I stood alone. The field was quiet, except for the crackle of burning bodies. Asterisk, reinforcements arrived hours later. They found me kneeling, head bowed, lasgun melted to slag. Asterisk, they called it a miracle. They said I had summoned the Emperor's wrath upon the heretics. I said nothing, but deep within, the whisper purred like a heartbeat. Asterisk, the seed is planted. The mind is only the beginning. I was transported back to the fleet for commendation. The officer saluted. The chaplain spoke of divine favor. I smiled when they asked me to lead a prayer, and when I spoke, I could feel the words ripple through the minds of those who listened. Subtle, infectious, beautiful. Asterisk, faith reborn, rewritten, not the Emperor's, ours. And thus the whisper became a hymn. We'll show the internal collapse, how the guardsman finally realizes the whisper was never guiding him to chaos, but into becoming its vessel. Reality begins to warp entirely, leading to his transformation and the true birth of corruption. Asterisk, greater than. There is a moment between thought and silence, where the self unravels. That is where chaos waits. Asterisk, I awoke to the sound of hymns, echoing through the ship's cathedral deck. Asterisk, the light filtering through the stained adamantine glass was gold and red, like blood and water. Asterisk, every note of the choir vibrated in my skull, a resonance that pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. Asterisk, and beneath the singing, I heard it. Asterisk, greater than, do you hear them worshipping you? Asterisk, the whisper was inside the music now, each syllable laced between the sacred words, invisible to mortal ears. Asterisk, I tried to block it out, but the harder I resisted, the louder it became, until the choir's hymn and the whisper's murmur became one. Asterisk, the sound was beautiful, terrible, infinite. Later, I was escorted to the observation deck for my commendation ceremony. The commanding officers gathered men and women in gold-trimmed uniforms, their eyes tired but proud. Asterisk, the chaplain stood before me, his voice carrying through the chamber. Asterisk, he spoke of duty, faith, and miracles. He called me chosen. I barely heard him. The stars outside the viewport were wrong. They moved, swirling like eyes opening in the dark. Greater than. They watch you now, the whisper said. You've shown them you can hear. Asterisk, something inside me began to throb, deep, beneath the ribs, where the soul should sleep. Asterisk, greater than, soon they'll listen. 2. Asterisk, I blinked, and saw veins of light crawling along the walls. The air shimmered like heat. No one else noticed. Asterisk, that night, I couldn't sleep. Every surface pulsed faintly. Every sound echoed as if from a great distance. Asterisk, when I closed my eyes, I could still see the stars, writhing. Asterisk, and behind them, something vast pressed against reality's veil, eager to be born. Asterisk greater than why do you resist? It asked. You are already chosen. You carry us in every breath. Asterisk I whispered back. I'm loyal to the Emperor. Asterisk loyalty. The word of slaves. Faith. The fear of silence. We offer you truth. Asterisk. My hands trembled. My mouth was dry. I felt the urge to pray, but no words came. Only the whisper, soft, endless, patient. Asterisk greater than say his name, and watch how easily it becomes ours. I went to the chapel. Alone. Asterisk, the statues loomed over me. The Emperor, the saints, the martyrs. Their eyes were blind, carved in cold metal. I fell to my knees and begged for silence, but silence never came. Asterisk, greater than he cannot hear you. The whisper said, but we can. We always have. Asterisk, the candles flickered. Shadows danced like wings. Asterisk, then one of the statues, the Emperor's own likeness, turned its head. Asterisk, its mouth opened, and I heard my own voice speaking from its lips. Greater than, I am the light of mankind, it said, and you are my vessel. I screamed. The sound echoed and shattered into laughter, not mine, not his, but something between. Asterisk, the whisper no longer spoke in my head. It spoke through me. When the guards found me, I was kneeling again, blood dripping from my nose, hands shaking. Asterisk, they asked what had happened. I told them I had seen a vision. They believed me. They brought me before the chaplain once more. Asterisk, he asked what the Emperor had said. Asterisk, and I told him, the light has returned. Soon all will see. Asterisk, he wept again, fell to his knees, begged me to lead the regiment in prayer. Asterisk, greater than yes. The whisper coiled around my heart. Lead them, guide them, open them. In the days that followed, I did as commanded. Asterisk, the prayers grew longer, the chanting louder. Asterisk, something in the air began to hum, like a distant choir beneath the ship's metal skin. Asterisk, the officers called it divine presence. Asterisk, the psychers called it phenomena. I called it inevitable. Greater than, the veil is thin now, the whisper said. One word, and it tears. I dreamed again. Asterisk, this time, I was not standing among skulls. Asterisk, I was floating in a sea of eyes. Endless, patient, each one watching from the depths of the warp. Asterisk, the figure with 1,000 eyes appeared once more, though now its form changed constantly. Man, beast, shadow, flame. Asterisk, greater than you have served well, it said. Do you see them now, your brothers of flesh? They pray, but not to him. They pray to what you have become. I looked down. My hands glowed faintly, veins pulsing with light, but the light was not holy. It was wrong, alive, serpentine. Asterisk, greater than you are the conduit, it said. You are the hymn. Asterisk, and when I awoke, the hum of the ship had grown louder. The following cycle, the ship's geller field flickered. Asterisk, the lights dimmed. The air became cold. Asterisk, panic spread through the crew. Prayers filled the corridors. I felt their terror wash over me like heat, and the whisper rose in pleasure. Greater than so much faith, so much fear, feed us. And I did. I prayed with them. I whispered his name, and every word I spoke was a threat of corruption, a prayer not to the Emperor, but to the warp itself. Asterisk, the air shimmered, the metal screamed. Asterisk, and in the silence that followed, I saw eyes open across the hull. The chaplain burst into my quarters, blood on his hands. Asterisk, something is wrong, he said. The ship is whispering. Asterisk, I smiled. It's been whispering for a long time. Asterisk, he stepped back, fear dawning in his eyes. What have you done? Show him, the voice urged. I raised my hand. The air rippled. Asterisk, the walls pulsed like flesh. The ship groaned, alive, aware. Asterisk, the chaplain fell to his knees. Emperor, forgive me. I leaned down, my voice calm, almost kind. He will, but he won't answer. And the whisper, my whisper spoke through me. Greater than we are his shadow. We are the echo he left behind. The chaplain screamed, as his faith shattered. A sound that became pure music to my ears. The ship never made it to its destination. The astropaths went blind. The navigator lost his mind, and I became the still point in the storm. The warp unfolded around us, like a flower of impossible color. Greater than you see now, said the voice. There was never a difference between prayer and possession. I stood before the viewport one last time. The stars had become eyes again, vast, unblinking, endless. I understood then. The whisper was never trying to take me. It was trying to become me. My thoughts, my faith, my fear all reshaped into something eternal. I no longer knew where I ended, and it began. Greater than, you are ready, it said. Speak the final word. And so I did. Light, blinding, infinite tore through the ship. Every mind screamed in harmony. Every soul burned in glorious unmaking. And in that instant, I heard everything. The laughter of gods, the prayers of dying men, the silence between stars. It was beautiful. It was horror. It was truth. When the light faded, I was gone, but my voice remained, drifting through the warp, whispering still. Not as a man, not as a guardsman, but as the seed of a new hymn. Greater than, and thus begins the song of chaos, not in the battlefield, but in the quiet between thoughts. Greater than yet, even then. As my essence dissolved into the warp, I could feel it searching for another vessel, another mind to enter. The cycle was only beginning. Chapter 2. The fracture of sanity. Greater than madness does not come suddenly. It grows like frost across glass, invisible, until it shatters the reflection beneath. The regiment was silent. No one spoke of what had happened aboard the transport vessel, Gloria Invictus. They said the warp storm swallowed it whole, that the Emperor had reclaimed its souls. But the survivors, they did not sleep. They did not blink. Among them was a man named Sergeant Varen Holt, veteran of 2 campaigns, a soldier carved from discipline and devotion. He survived the incident by pure chance, or so the priests claimed. But Varen knew better. He remembered the light. He remembered the whisper. And he remembered the face of the man who had brought it. They said that man was a saint. That he had heard the Emperor's voice. That his faith had ignited the warp itself. But when Varen dreamed, he saw something else. He saw a figure standing amidst molten stars, its body made of smoke and memory. The voice that once whispered through another now murmured in the hollow spaces between Varen's thoughts. Greater than he carried the song. You carry the echo. Varen would wake drenched in sweat, gripping his laspistol, his eyes scanning the darkness of the barracks. But there was nothing there. Nothing except the faint vibration in his skull. A distant hum that refused to fade. He told himself it was the aftershock of the warp. He told himself it would pass. He was wrong. The regiment redeployed to Fernax Prime, a world still smoldering from rebellion. The air reeked of ash and promethium. Cities lay in ruin, half devoured by orbital bombardment. Varen's orders were simple: purge the heretics, restore order, and rebuild morale. But from the moment his boots touched the ground, he felt it, a pressure behind his eyes, a sound at the edge of hearing. Greater than, we remember this place. He froze mid-step. His squad stared. Sergeant, one of them asked. Varen blinked. The air shimmered. then stilled. Nothing, he said. Just the wind. But there was no wind, only whispers. Days bled into nights. The planet's ruins seemed to hum faintly, like old machinery dreaming. The soldiers grew restless. Some claimed they saw shapes moving in the dust, shadows with eyes, watching from the periphery. Varen dismissed the rumors at first. He was a soldier, not a child. But each night, as he sat cleaning his weapon, he heard footsteps outside his quarters. When he checked, no one was there. Only the faint scent of incense. And ash. The nightmares returned. He dreamed of corridors made of flesh and steel, of walls that pulsed like veins. He walked endlessly toward a door that whispered his name, greater than Open it. We are waiting. He reached for the handle, and woke to find his hand grasping the air above his bed. His heartbeat thundered. His skin was cold. He tried to pray. But when he spoke the Emperor's name, his voice cracked, and something else answered. Greater than you invoke him, but he does not speak. We do. One evening, during patrol, a trooper named Brecht began to hum. At first, it was nothing, a soft, tuneless murmur under his breath. But the others noticed a pattern. It was the same rhythm Varen had heard in his dreams, a slow, deliberate pulse, like the heartbeat of something vast. Brecht, Varen said. Stop that noise. The trooper blinked. Noise, sir. You were humming. I don't think I was. Varen stared. For a moment, Brecht's eyes reflected light that wasn't there, a flicker of violet beneath the surface. And then it was gone. That night, Varen recorded his observations in his data slate. Possible residual warp contamination from the Invictus incident. Crew showing signs of auditory hallucination. Must report to commissariat. He stopped writing. His hand trembled. The slate's screen flickered. Lines of text appeared where he hadn't typed. You're the contamination. He dropped it instantly. It hit the floor, blank again. Sleep abandoned him. He spent the following nights pacing, muttering prayers, clutching the Aquila around his neck until the metal cut into his palm. But faith, once unshakable, now felt brittle, like a shell around something shifting beneath. Greater than faith is a doorway, the whisper breathed, and you are learning how to open it. Varen snarled into the dark. I am a servant of the Emperor. Yes, and so were we. He froze. The voice had changed, deeper, layered, as though 1,000 mouths spoke in unison from inside his skull. The next day, he found Trooper Brecht dead. The man's body was curled in prayer, but his face was frozen in ecstasy. Blood had poured from his ears, forming a perfect circle around his head. In the center, drawn with trembling fingers, was a symbol Varen did not recognize until he looked closer. It was an eye. The same shape that haunted his dreams. He saw too much, the whisper murmured. He heard the hymn too clearly. Varen staggered back, bile rising in his throat. He ordered the corpse burned. He ordered silence. But silence would not obey. The whispers grew. They came during prayer, during meals, during combat drills. They spoke in the voices of his dead comrades, in the tone of the chaplain, in the echo of the Emperor himself. Greater than we are you. You are us. You remember, don't you? The light. The song. Varen clutched his head and screamed, but only for a moment, because when he opened his mouth, he heard laughter spill out instead. He fell to his knees, trembling. His reflection in the metal floor smiled back, even though he wasn't smiling. Greater than you see. You are learning. The fracture is the beginning. By the 6th day, reality itself began to warp. Asterisk walls stretched when he looked away. Shadows moved against the light. Asterisk voices echoed from inside mirrors, calling his name like a lover's sigh. Asterisk, he began to write compulsively, words he didn't understand, shapes that burned when he drew them. Asterisk, he filled whole pages before realizing they weren't in any human language. Asterisk, the letters twisted as he stared, reshaping into eyes that blinked. Asterisk, greater than write, vessel. Write our memory into your world. Asterisk Varen hurled the pages into the fire. The flames burned blue. He tried to seek help. Asterisk the commissar dismissed him, claiming fatigue. The chaplain offered prayer, but when they placed the purity seal upon his armor, it blistered his skin. Asterisk smoke rose from the parchment, and the sigil turned black. Asterisk, everyone saw it. No one spoke. Asterisk Varen was left standing in the middle of the chapel, staring at the charred mark that now pulsed like a heartbeat. That night, he saw the figure again, the one from his dreams. Asterisk, but this time, it stood closer. Asterisk, its shape flickered between forms, human, demon, and something neither. Asterisk, greater than you, carry his echo, it whispered. You are what remains of the song. Asterisk Varen shouted, what do you want from me? We want you to listen. The world fell away. Asterisk, he was standing in the void again, surrounded by eyes. Each one looked through him, into the place where his soul should have been. Greater than the fracture widens. Soon you will see as we see. He felt his mind tear like cloth. Then, silence. He woke on the ground, hands covered in blood that wasn't his. Asterisk, the bodies of his squad lay scattered around him, eyes wide, mouths open in silent screams. He didn't remember killing them. He didn't remember anything. But the whisper was calm now. Greater than you are becoming whole. Asterisk, greater than sanity is not lost in an instant. It unravels, thread by thread, until the pattern beneath is revealed, and the pattern was never human to begin with. Asterisk, greater than the mind, is a fortress. They told us, but they never warned what happens when the fortress begins to dream. Asterisk, Varen stopped marking days after the massacre. Time no longer behaved. The sun rose in different colors, sometimes crimson, sometimes green, sometimes not at all. Asterisk, the shadows lengthened in directions that light could not explain. Asterisk, and in the silence between seconds, he heard the whispering now, a choir. Asterisk, each voice was distinct, yet they spoke as one. Each syllable formed from his breath. Greater than, do you see how beautiful it is? Asterisk, do you feel the shape of the unseen? Asterisk, he tried to shut his ears, to scream, to recite the catechism of steel, but every prayer twisted mid-sentence, each word turning into another's name. Asterisk, Avenue of A.V. Asterisk, he froze. That name. Asterisk, he had never heard it before, yet his tongue shaped it as though he had always known it. He wandered through the ruins of Fernax Prime, alone, rifle slung, armor cracked and scorched. Asterisk, the Vox was dead. The stars above flickered like dying embers. Asterisk, he stumbled through the remains of a man, its walls crawling with rust and sigils. Asterisk, the metal itself seemed to breathe, faint, rhythmic expansions, like lungs. He pressed his hand to it. It was warm. Asterisk, and beneath his palm, the wall pulsed with a second heartbeat, slower than his own. Asterisk, he pulled back instantly. His glove was wet with something black and shining. Asterisk, do not fear it. The voices soothed. You are feeling the pulse of creation. Asterisk, he wanted to vomit. Instead, he laughed hollow, trembling laughter that echoed too long. He wandered deeper. Asterisk, once, this place had built weapons for the Imperium, tanks, maybe even titans. Asterisk, now, the machines stood frozen mid-motion, their limbs half like statues dreaming of flesh. Soot covered everything, and in the center of the hall, Someone had written on the floor in blood. They listen when we think too loudly. Varen stared at the words until they began to crawl, shifting into new ones. Greater than, they speak when we stop pretending to be human. Asterisk. He ran. Asterisk through corridors that bent like serpents. Through echoing spaces that felt alive. Asterisk, each step sounded delayed, like the ground took a moment to remember it had been touched. Asterisk, he burst into the open air, gasping, eyes wide. The city stretched before him, but wrong. Towers leaned inward, forming spires like fangs. Asterisk, the clouds churned in spirals that pointed toward a single place, the cathedral at the city's heart. Asterisk, its bells were ringing, though no wind stirred them. Asterisk, the sound rolled through the ruins like thunder underwater, muffled, suffocating. And in that rhythm, the whisper spoke again, greater than come home. Varen halt. He staggered forward, drawn like a moth toward the sound. Asterisk, each step felt lighter. His armor seemed to hum. His skin prickled with static. The city watched him, windows glimmering like eyes. He passed corpses in prayer, their faces twisted not in fear, but rapture. Asterisk, their lips still moved, muttering syllables that made his teeth ache. Asterisk, greater than Vinera. He didn't know what it meant, but the more he heard it, the more it fit, like a missing piece clicking into place within his mind. Asterisk, inside the cathedral, light fell through shattered stained glass, beams of purple and gold that swirled like liquid. Asterisk, he walked past the altar, past the broken icons of the Emperor. Asterisk, each statue's face had been carved away. In their place were mirrors, warped, molten, reflecting nothing real. Asterisk, he saw his reflection in one and gasped. His eyes were wrong. There were faint rings of light beneath the iris circles that turned slowly, like the warp's own orbit. Asterisk, he blinked. The reflection didn't. Asterisk, you see us now, the mirror whispered. You are learning our shape. Asterisk, he smashed it with his rifle butt, but even in shards. His reflection smiled. A sound rose behind him, a wet rustle, like silk dragged through blood. He turned. A figure stood by the altar, cloaked in blackened bone. Its face was covered by a cracked Aquila mask. Asterisk, who are you? Varen demanded. The figure tilted its head when it spoke. The voice came from everywhere. Asterisk, greater than I am, the priest who prayed for salvation. Asterisk, Varen's grip tightened on his weapon. Then why do you wear that mask? Asterisk, greater than, because the Emperor did not answer. Someone else did. Asterisk, it raised its hand. The flesh beneath the sleeve shimmered, part metal, part shadow, part thought. Asterisk, and he gave me truth. Varen fired. The lasbolt struck center mass, but the figure didn't fall. Asterisk, it dissolved, unraveling into smoke that coiled around him. Asterisk, we are not your enemy, Varen. We are what you already are. Asterisk, he screamed. The smoke poured into his mouth, his lungs, his mind, filling him with heat, with light, with voices. The cathedral vanished. Asterisk, he stood now in a field of stars, endless and alive. Asterisk, shapes drifted through the void, colossal forms of impossible beauty and terror. Asterisk, he saw gods devouring galaxies, demons being born from the ashes of thought. Asterisk, and through it all, one presence pulsed, immense, benevolent, cruel. Asterisk, greater than he whispered. Asterisk, greater than yes, it replied. You remember our name? We have been calling for so long. The vision collapsed. Asterisk, Varen fell to his knees, gasping, back inside the ruined church. Asterisk, the walls were melting, the air vibrating like liquid. Asterisk, he felt something moving beneath his skin, faint threads, writhing, spreading. Asterisk, they glowed when he breathed, forming lines that matched the symbols from his dreams. Asterisk, we are aligning, the voices said. Mind to flesh, soul to echo. Asterisk, he clawed at his arm, tearing the skin, but the light only grew stronger. Asterisk, he saw shapes behind his eyes, eyes without bodies, watching from inside his thoughts. Asterisk, every time he blinked, they blinked with him. He screamed until his throat bled. Asterisk, when he opened his eyes again, he was no longer alone. Asterisk, figures surrounded him, his dead squad mates standing upright, eyes hollow, faces serene. Each bore a mark glowing faintly in their forehead, the same mark that now burned on his arm. He whispered. The corpse smiled. Greater than we are you. You are us. The fracture is complete. Varen dropped his weapon. Asterisk, the cathedral pulsed once, as though breathing. Asterisk, the stained glass reformed behind him. Colors shifting into scenes he could not comprehend. Wars that had not yet happened. Worlds that did not yet exist. Asterisk, he saw armies made of thought and flame, marching through the void. Asterisk, he saw his own face among them, crowned in shadow, laughing without sound. Asterisk, he fell backward, sobbing. Asterisk, do not weep, the voices said gently. This is revelation. Greater than pain is only the sound of your old self dying. Asterisk. The world twisted. Fernax Prime burned around him, but above the flames, in the skies themselves, he saw faces forming, titanic, ethereal, endless. They looked down and spoke in harmony. Greater than welcome, vessel. The door is open. Asterisk, and somewhere, deep inside him, another voice whispered, not like the others, softer, human, greater than. Run. He turned and fled. Asterisk, through streets that melted, through air that whispered, through shadows that begged to be seen. Asterisk, his body moved, but his mind lagged behind, like a candle carried through storm wind. Asterisk, he didn't know if he was alive, or dreaming, or already within the warp, only that the voice urging him to run was his own. He ran until the world faded into white. Asterisk, madness is not always a fall. Sometimes it is an ascent, a climb toward something vast enough to swallow the soul. There is a moment when thought ceases to belong to the thinker, when every dream becomes a door. Varen awoke in silence. He was lying on his back in a field of ash. The world around him was wrong, too vast, too bright, too quiet. Asterisk, the sky shimmered in colors that didn't exist, folding inward, spiraling endlessly. Each breath he took left a trail in the air, lines of light that lingered too long before fading. Asterisk, he reached for his rifle. It was gone. His armor was clean, pristine, the marks of war erased. Asterisk, he blinked. The field rippled like water, and when the ripples settled, he was standing in the trench again, the same mud, the same broken walls, the same corpses frozen mid-scream. Asterisk, except none of them were still. Asterisk, each face turned toward him, eyes wide, lips moving in silence. He could not hear them, yet he understood. Asterisk, you left us here. You were chosen, and we were not. Do you think the Emperor remembers your name? He staggered back. The corpses rose slowly, bending in unnatural arcs, bones cracking, flesh folding backward. Their movements had no weight, no resistance, as if gravity had forgotten them. Asterisk, one of them breaked, tilted his head, mouth opening wider than it should have. From within, 1,000 whispers poured out like smoke. Asterisk, you are remembering wrong, the voices said. It was never a battle. It was a birth. He ran again, but every step took him deeper into somewhere else. The trench dissolved into light. The light became liquid. The liquid became walls, made of memory, thin, translucent, throbbing with scenes from his life. Asterisk, he saw his childhood on Cadia, the drill fields, the endless sermons about duty. He saw his mother's face, blurred, speaking words that no longer fit her mouth. Asterisk, be loyal, she said. Be pure. Asterisk, her voice split mid-sentence. One part prayer, one part laughter. Purity is only fear wearing a mask. He screamed her name, but the memory burned away, leaving behind only eyes. Dozens of them, floating in the dark, watching, blinking in slow rhythm. We have seen everything you will become. He tried to deny it, to find some anchor, some proof of self. Asterisk, he slammed his hands against his head. Stop it, stop it. Asterisk, but the moment he spoke, the air rippled, and another him appeared, standing only a few paces away, identical, expressionless, watching. Varen stared at his own reflection. The copy smiled faintly. Asterisk, you keep calling them voices, it said. But aren't they just us? Asterisk, Varen lunged forward, but his double did not move. Instead, it dissolved into dust that swirled upward, forming words in the air. The fracture deepens. Then came the sound, asterisk, a low hum, growing louder. It wasn't mechanical or organic. It was the sound of thought itself. Asterisk, he clutched his ears, but it vibrated inside his bones. Asterisk, every idea he'd ever had, every fear, every desire, surfaced at once. He saw them around him, alive. Asterisk, his guilt took the shape of rusted wings. His rage became a black sun. His faith crawled across the ground like a dying insect, whispering hymns. Asterisk, do you see, Varen? The unseen voice said. This is what your mind has always looked like to us. Asterisk, he wept. What are you doing to me? We are only showing you yourself. The sky cracked open. Asterisk, beyond it, he saw something vast, a sea of thoughts, bleeding into each other. Each mind a ripple in an infinite ocean. Asterisk, he could feel them, billions of souls, screaming, dreaming, dying, all at once. It was unbearable, and yet, intoxicating. Asterisk, he felt himself slipping into that tide, dissolving, becoming one more ripple. Asterisk, do not fight it. The voice murmured. You were never alone in your skull. You were never separate. The Emperor lied. Those words struck like a knife through his faith. Asterisk, he had heard that phrase whispered by heretics before he had reported them, seen them burned, but hearing it inside himself was something else entirely. Asterisk, it didn't sound like blasphemy. It sounded like truth. A figure rose from the tide of thought, shaped like a man, but formed of light and shadow both. Its body pulsed with constellations, its face a mask of serenity. It looked like him. Do you understand now? It asked gently. Asterisk, Varen shook his head. You're not real. The figure smiled. I am as real as your fear, and you have feared me since birth. Asterisk, the being stepped closer. Its presence was both warmth and freezing vacuum, both love and annihilation. Asterisk, chaos does not enter your mind, Varen. It awakens it. Asterisk, the field shifted again, this time into the command bunker of his regiment. His old captain stood there, eyes bleeding black, voice echoing with layers. Asterisk, we thought the warp was outside us, but it was inside all along. He gestured toward Varen. You are the proof. A mind open enough to hear. Asterisk, Varen fell to his knees. Make it stop, he begged. Asterisk, it doesn't stop, the captain said. It becomes. Asterisk, the walls of the bunker peeled back like paper, revealing the galaxy, a living, breathing organism of stars and screams. Asterisk, and at its center, something vast and laughing stirred. Asterisk, do you see us now? He screamed, and the sound shattered the stars. He awoke again, kneeling, alone, in the cathedral. Asterisk, blood trickled from his ears. His body trembled. The whispers had stopped, but only because they no longer needed words. Asterisk, now. He understood them without sound. Asterisk, every object vibrated faintly. The walls, the pews, even the dust motes in the air. They all pulsed with a rhythm, the heartbeat of the warp itself. Asterisk, he could feel it syncing with his own pulse. Thud, 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 perfect harmony. Asterisk, you see, we are already within you. Asterisk, he whispered, What are you? We are the echo that never ends. Then, from deep within his mind, another memory surfaced. The battlefield again, the day it all began. He saw himself firing at shadows, screaming orders to the dead, praying for reinforcement that never came. But this time, he noticed something new. In the smoke behind him. A shape had always been there, a tall, winged silhouette, watching. Each time he blinked, it was closer. He realized, with dread, that this was no hallucination. It had always been following him, even before the whispers, even before the war. You were chosen long before you were born. He fell forward, sobbing. Chosen for what? To be the bridge. Light poured into him, searing, unbearable. He felt his mind stretching, splitting, fracturing into thousands of selves. Each one saw a different version of reality, one of fire, one of ice, one of endless hunger. Each version whispered back to him, forming a chorus of his own voice. We are the bridge, we are the gate, we are the dream that dreams itself. He screamed until his voice broke. The sound echoed through every reality at once. When silence returned, he was no longer afraid. There was only clarity. The warp was not chaos, it was truth. And the human mind, every fragile, trembling thought, was its reflection. He could see now how the Imperium's faith was just another cage, how every prayer to the Emperor was heard, not by him, but by something else listening beneath the veil. Now you understand why we whisper. Varen nodded slowly. He could feel the edges of his mind softening, expanding. The fracture was no longer a wound, it was an opening. The world around him melted one last time, and for a moment, he stood in both places at once, in the cathedral, and in the endless warp beyond. The two realities intertwined, inseparable. And in that moment, he realized the truth. He was no longer dreaming. He was the dream. And so the fracture did not destroy him, it invited him in. But what waits beyond sanity's edge is not salvation. Greater than at the edge of reason. Truth does not reveal itself, it consumes the witness. There was no pain now. No sound, no distinction between breath and silence. Varen floated in a vast expanse of colorless mist, weightless, voiceless, nameless. At first, he thought he was dead. Then he realized death would have been mercy. The mist around him began to ripple with unseen motion. It pulsed, as if breathing, as if alive. Every pulse carried a rhythm, faint at first, then louder, deeper, resonating inside his skull. Greater than thud. Thud. Each beat was perfectly timed with his own heart. And then the mist spoke. Greater than now. You feel it, don't you? The harmony between your flesh and the immaterial. You are learning to listen. He wanted to respond, but his mouth no longer moved. Words had lost meaning. His thoughts, however, were heard. Greater than who are you? Greater than we are what you have always ignored. The noise behind the prayer. The shape within the flame? Am I dead? No, you are becoming. Light burst through the fog, not light as mortals know it, but awareness itself, splitting into spirals of meaning. Shapes moved within that brilliance, wings without form, eyes without faces, geometries that sang instead of existed. The universe was unraveling before him, revealing its architecture, and it was alive. Greater than every mind touches the warp, said the voice. Every thought feeds us. Every dream builds us. He saw them, countless souls flickering like candles, their prayers rising like smoke into that infinite hunger. Some prayers became angels, most became monsters, and all of them were connected. A web of light and terror stretching across existence. Asterisk greater than. Now you see why there is no escape. To think is to invite us. Varen's consciousness trembled. Asterisk. He felt himself falling through layers of memory. Asterisk. He saw every battlefield he had ever walked, but this time, the dead were not silent. Asterisk. They reached toward him, mouths open, eyes glowing with unholy fire. Greater than join us. He tried to pull away, but their hands were gentle, not violent. Asterisk. Their touch burned with warmth, like forgiveness. Asterisk. Greater than. You've carried their guilt for too long, whispered the voice. Let it go. Let it all go. And so he did. The faces of his comrades dissolved into starlight. His shame evaporated. His fear quieted. Only serenity remained. Asterisk. The warp's brilliance folded around him, cradling him like an ocean of thought. Asterisk. Every question he had ever asked about life, war, faith, echoed back with answers to vast language. Asterisk. Greater than the Emperor, he thought weakly. Was he ever real? Asterisk. Greater than real. The voice chuckled softly, 1,000 tones at once. He is as real as the idea that named him, but ideas are food to us. Asterisk. Greater than. He was born in the warp, fed by it, protected by it, and yet he dares to cage it. Asterisk. Greater than. That is his sin. Asterisk. The truth hit him like a THUNDERCLAP. Asterisk. The Emperor, the God he had worshipped his whole life, was not separate from this darkness. He was part of it. He was another echo of the same screaming infinity. The realization broke him, not with despair, but with understanding. He began to laugh. The sound rippled through the void, warping it, creating new shapes that pulsed with his laughter. Asterisk. Every thought he had now manifested. He thought of fire, and fire bloomed. He thought of water, and it flowed around him. Asterisk. He thought of the Emperor, and a golden figure appeared before him, bleeding from the eyes. The figure spoke in his own voice. Greater than. You made me, it said. You prayed, and so I existed. Asterisk. Greater than this is the truth of faith, the voice whispered. Belief shapes reality. You are the God you begged to. Asterisk. He felt something within his soul uncoil, a freedom he had never known. For the first time in his life, he was not afraid to exist. Asterisk. But then, the serenity began to twist. Asterisk. The warmth grew hotter, too bright to endure. Asterisk. The light started to tear, revealing the shapes behind it, writhing, beautiful, horrifying. They were watching him, not with hatred, but with hunger. Asterisk. He is ready, they murmured. The vessel opens. Asterisk. He felt hands, invisible, countless, reaching through his mind, rearranging, sculpting. Asterisk. They weren't taking him apart. They were refining him. Each thought that resisted was peeled away. Each emotion that clung to mortality was burned. Asterisk. You are almost perfect, they whispered. Almost ours. Reality pulsed. He saw flashes of himself across 1,000 versions of the galaxy. In one, a preacher screaming holy lies to a crowd that bowed in tears. Asterisk. In another, a chaos marine kneeling before a warlord made of molten bone. Asterisk. In another, a nameless ghost drifting through the void, whispering madness into sleeping minds. Each one was him. Each one was true. Asterisk. He reached out to touch them, and they reached back. Asterisk. Greater than. All yourselves converge. Every possibility merges. You are the fracture, and the whole. Asterisk. He gasped. I can't hold it. It's too much greater than. Then let go. And so he did. The last wall of his humanity shattered. His memories dissolved like ink in water. He forgot his name. He forgot his face. He forgot what it meant to be one. Asterisk. In that surrender, something ancient opened its eyes inside him. Asterisk, the voice that had guided him no longer whispered. It spoke through him. Asterisk, greater than we are awake. The mist turned to fire. The fire turned to flesh. Asterisk, and from that fusion, he was reborn. He found himself once again in his body, kneeling in the cathedral, drenched in sweat and blood. But the world no longer looked the same. He could see the souls of things, the invisible threads of warp energy connecting every living being. Asterisk. He could see the prayers rising like smoke. The lies of faith painted across the air. Every candle flame whispered secrets. Every shadow moved with purpose. Asterisk, what am I? He asked aloud, voice trembling. Asterisk, you are what humanity denies it is, said the voice within, a child of both flesh and infinity. Asterisk, greater than you are not possessed. Varen, you are completed. He wept, not from horror, but from awe. Asterisk, he stood, unsteady but alive. Asterisk, the cathedral's stained glass flickered, showing not saints, but stars. Asterisk, the icons of the Emperor seemed to smile, their eyes glowing faintly red. Asterisk, he walked forward, past the altar, leaving bloody footprints on the marble. Every step echoed like thunder. Each echo carried words not his own. Asterisk, the fracture is healed. The mind is open. The seed is sown. He reached the great door and placed his hand upon it. The metal hissed beneath his touch, melting slightly. As if recognizing him, asterisk beyond lay the world, cold, blind, unknowing, a galaxy ripe for awakening. He smiled. Asterisk, greater than they'll call it madness, he said softly. But madness is just sight without chains. Asterisk, the wind outside answered with a whisper, familiar, endless, loving, greater than welcome home. And as he stepped into the light, the warp followed. End of chapter 2. The fracture of sanity asterisk gives. Next chapter, the warp's caress asterisk, greater than now that the mind is open. The warp itself begins to see through him, and to feel, asterisk. It began with the stillness between screams, asterisk, the kind of silence that does not comfort, but waits, the kind that seems to listen back. In that silence, the void stirred, and the veil thinned. Asterisk, the human mind was never built to see what lies beyond the material. It was crafted by the Emperor, or by evolution, or by chance to endure war, hunger, and the horrors of flesh. But not this. Not the warp, the place where thought and nightmare become one. Where every whisper has teeth, and every fear takes form. Asterisk for the guardsman, reality no longer held edges. The walls of his thoughts were melting, his memories bled into colors that did not exist. The prayers he once muttered before battle had turned into echoes of themselves, repeated backward by unseen mouths. Asterisk, greater than do you feel it? The whisper coiled again, not around his ears, but through his skull. The truth beneath your pain. Asterisk, each word was warm, too warm, like breath against his soul. It didn't hurt. Not yet. It felt soothing, as though something vast and ancient was touching his mind with reverence, peeling back the layers of fear, one by one. Asterisk, he tried to pray. The name of the Emperor slipped past his lips like ash. The moment it left him, he could feel something recoil in the dark, not out of fear, but amusement. Asterisk, greater than the Emperor. The voice echoed softly. Does he hear you still? Asterisk, that single question unmade the last pillar of certainty in his heart. The warp feeds not on belief alone, but on doubt, on the tremor that comes when faith is tested and found wanting. Asterisk, in that moment, the guardsman's soul became a battlefield, not of flesh and steel, but of meaning. Asterisk, he saw colors burst behind his eyes, not pigments, but feelings. Envy shaped into emerald flame, lust as molten gold, rage as crimson lightning. They spun and twisted through his consciousness like serpents made of thought, weaving symbols he could not read but somehow understood. Asterisk the warp had noticed him. Asterisk, and it was curious. Asterisk every human thought, every regret, every unspoken desire, all radiates into the Imperium. Normally, those sparks dissolve among billions of others, unseen. But sometimes, when a soul is cracked open by fear, trauma, grief, the light burns brighter. It calls to the predators that dwell beyond. Asterisk they came to him not as beasts, but as ideas. One promised understanding, another, release, a third, purpose. He tried to turn away. But how do you turn from your own thoughts? How do you escape a question that only you can hear? The warp's tendrils slid deeper, caressing the edges of his sanity. Greater than, you have fought so long, it whispered. So many die for nothing. What if your suffering had meaning? That word, meaning, cut deeper than any blade. It was what every guardsman secretly desired. Asterisk, to believe the endless wars. The mud, the screams, the futility, meant something. Asterisk, and so. The first hook sank in. Asterisk the warp does not conquer by force. It seduces. It takes what already exists within pain, grief, longing, and reshapes it into a doorway. The guardsman's longing for purpose became that door. His loneliness became the key. Asterisk now, when he blinked, he saw not the battlefield, but the spaces between things. The world shimmered like oil upon water, and in every ripple, eyes opened and closed, countless, gentle, watching. Asterisk greater than do not fear. They said in unison, you are not alone. Asterisk tears filled his eyes. Whether from terror or relief, he no longer knew. He wanted to believe those words, even as the rational part of him screamed no. That scream was fading fast. Asterisk. The warp is not a place, it is a reflection. Asterisk, a psychic ocean fed by every mind that has ever dreamed, despaired, or raged. It is the collective shadow of sentience. The entities within it, demons, gods, fragments of will, are not truly alive, as mortals understand life. They are patterns of emotion, given form, immortal echoes of mortal sin. They do not exist to destroy humanity. Humanity creates them, sustains them, worships them, fears them, and through that fear, they grow. Asterisk, the guardsman's whisper was merely one note in an eternal symphony of madness. But to the warp, even one note can shift the tune. Asterisk, and so. His descent deepened. Asterisk he felt the presence now, vast and comforting, pressing its hand upon his soul. It showed him visions. A universe without war, without the Imperium's chains, without suffering. In this illusion, he stood as a free man beneath endless starlight. Asterisk, greater than this could be yours. It said, asterisk, all it requires is your surrender. Asterisk his pulse slowed. His breath trembled. He almost said yes. Asterisk, but the human soul, even in its breaking, carries defiance. Somewhere beneath the layers of corruption, the memory of his comrades' faces flickered. The sound of laughter in a trench, the sight of an Aquila drawn in the dirt. He clenched his teeth. No, he whispered back, and for the first time, the warp laughed. Greater than it purred. So you still believe you have a choice. Asterisk, the laughter rolled through his mind like thunder, shaking every memory loose. Images shattered his mother's face, the taste of rations, the sound of gunfire, all reduced to fragments drifting in the psychic tide. Asterisk he reached for them, desperate, but his fingers found only smoke. Asterisk the warp caressed him again, gentler this time, as though it pitied him. Asterisk, greater than you fight yourself, it whispered. You are yourself. We only reveal what was already inside. Asterisk, and in that moment, he understood the terrible truth. Asterisk, chaos does not enter the mind, it awakens within it. Asterisk, but awakening is only the beginning, for once the mind opens to the warp, the soul can never truly close again. Asterisk, greater than the moment he realized it was inside him, not around him. Everything changed. The whispers no longer came from beyond the veil. They echoed from within, gentle, loving, and utterly wrong. The human brain is a fragile fortress. It defends itself with reason, with denial, with the illusion of control. But when chaos enters, it does not storm the walls, it becomes the walls. It replaces each brick with a thought, a feeling, a memory that never belonged to you. And before you realize it, the fortress has always been theirs. The guardsman's mind was now a landscape, infinite corridors of half-remembered dreams, battlegrounds made of his own regrets. He walked through them barefoot, the ground beneath his feet pulsing like living flesh. Every step he took, something watched him, not a being, but the act of awareness itself, greater than. You built this place, the voice said softly. Every fear, every lie, every oath, it all led you here. He turned and saw himself, or rather, something wearing his face. The reflection smiled. Its eyes were wrung too wide, to knowing. We've been waiting, it said. You've been calling to us for years. He tried to deny it, but the memories came flooding back. The rage at his officers, the blasphemous thoughts during prayer, the hatred for a galaxy that demanded his life and gave nothing in return. Each unspoken curse against the Imperium became a seed, and now those seeds bloomed. Greater than you called us every time you screamed into the void, the reflection whispered, every time you wondered if the Emperor truly cared. He fell to his knees. His tears sizzled where they hit the ground, each drop opening tiny mouths that whispered prayers in reverse. The warp feeds on contradiction, on the collision between devotion and despair. To love the Emperor but doubt him is a song it finds irresistible. The guardsman's faith, once pure, had become the perfect vessel for corruption. He stumbled through his own mind, corridors shifting around him like a labyrinth of thought. Voices followed him, some pleading, some laughing, some simply watching. He saw flashes of the material world bleeding through, his body trembling on the battlefield, comrades dragging him toward a medic, the distant thunder of artillery. But even those fragments began to lose meaning. What was the difference between flesh and thought, when both could be rewritten? A doorway appeared before him, made of bone and light, carved with words in languages older than stars. The voice, his voice, yet not spoke again. Greater than step through, and you will understand. He hesitated. Every instinct screamed no. But the mind is treacherous. Curiosity is its original sin. He stepped forward. On the other side was not hell, at least not in the way mortals imagine it. It was beautiful. Endless skies of color no spectrum could name. Shapes that were emotion given form. Joy as flame, grief as ice, laughter as crystal shattering into music. Rivers of memory flowing upward into impossible stars. And everywhere, voices, millions of them, whispering in a harmony that made his heart ache. Greater than you see now, they sang. The warp is not death. It is everything. He felt weightless, free. The pain of his mortal body was gone. The exhaustion of years, the guilt of survival, the fear of dying all dissolved like smoke. For the first time, he felt peace. And that peace was the cruelest lie of all, because in that stillness, in that comfort, he could feel something crawling beneath the surface of his joy, something using it, shaping it. His feelings weren't his own anymore. His peace belonged to something vast and hungry. Greater than do you love this? The voice murmured. Then give it to us. He tried to hold on to his thoughts, his memories, but they were dissolving. Threads of smoke pulled from his grasp. He screamed, and the sound came out as light. The warp laughed, not cruelly, but tenderly. Greater than you are not dying, it said. You are becoming. In the materium, his body convulsed. The Medicae shouted for a priest. Holy oil splashed across his skin, sizzling as they touched the mark beginning to burn into his chest, a faint, swirling sigil, alive with meaning no human could read. Asterisk to the others. It was possession. To him, it was revelation. Inside his mind, the warp unfolded further. He saw the four great shadows at its heart: Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, Slaanesh, each a reflection of all that lives and dies in mortal hearts. They were not strangers to him. They had been within him all along. His rage was Khorne's whisper, his fear of decay. Nurgle's embrace, asterisk his dreams of meaning. Tzeentch's game, asterisk his longing for peace. Slaanesh's kiss, and he realized with horror that he could not hate them. How do you hate what is you? Asterisk, greater than you are the sum of your gods, the chorus whispered, and they are the sum of you. Asterisk the warp caressed him again, this time not as a voice, but as sensation. Asterisk it felt like 1,000 hands stroking his thoughts, reshaping his memories into art. Every regret became a melody, every failure a shrine. His mind was being remade, and it was beautiful. Asterisk he saw visions of himself as a prophet, a god, a monster. Asterisk in one moment, he stood on a golden world, worshipped as savior. Asterisk in another, he was a creature of pure thought, devouring stars. Asterisk in all of them, he was free and utterly alone. He tried to anchor himself to remember the real, the tangible. He thought of his name, but it slipped away. He thought of his regiment. Gone. Asterisk he thought of Terra, of the Emperor, of the oath he swore. Nothing remained. All that was left was the whisper, wrapping around him like a lover's breath. Asterisk, there are no names here, only truth. Asterisk he looked into the warp and saw himself, multiplied 1,000-fold, every version of who he could have been, every life he might have lived, all screaming at once, and the warp smiled. Greater than. Now you understand, it said. The universe is not cruel, not kind, only hungry. Asterisk the truth tore through him, a revelation and a wound. His sanity broke upon it, splintering into 1,000 shards of self. Each shard saw the galaxy differently. Some saw beauty, some saw terror, some saw nothing at all, and the warp gathered them up, every fragment, and held them close. Greater than sleep now, it whispered. Let us dream through you. Greater than, but even dreams can rot, and what the warp gives, it always takes back. Greater than in the silence that followed, something began to move. Asterisk, not in the air, not in the ground, inside him. The stillness was not peace, it was gestation. Asterisk, the warp does not speak in words. It becomes words, emotions, memories, and flesh. What had been whispered now grew teeth. What had been comfort became pressure, a vast, gentle force pushing from within, seeking to be born. The guardsman floated within the dream realm of his own unraveling. He tried to scream, but the sound came out as laughter. Asterisk, he tried to pray, but the words turned to rot mid-air. Asterisk, even his heartbeat no longer obeyed him. It pulsed in strange rhythms, each throb matching the rhythm of the voices, whispering his name. Greater than, do not resist, they said. You are the bridge, the gate, the answer to a question the stars forgot to ask. He looked down and saw his body dissolving into light. Each atom of his flesh peeled away, revealing patterns beneath, runes of self, written in the shape of his life. Asterisk, they glowed brighter, burning his identity away until only the raw outline of consciousness remained. Asterisk, for a heartbeat, if such things still existed, he saw the truth of what he was. Asterisk, not a soldier, not a man. Asterisk, a spark, a ripple in a sea of infinite hunger, a dream pretending to be human. And then the light went out. When he awoke, he was lying on the battlefield again. Asterisk, mud, blood, fire, the stink of promethium, the cries of the dying. The warp was gone, or perhaps merely hidden. A medic hovered above him, shouting something. A priest waved an incense censer, chanting the litany of purity. He could feel the words strike against his skin like stones. They hurt. They burned. Hold him down. The medic screamed. He's convulsing again. Holy seals were pressed to his armor. Each one sizzled. Blackening. The priest's voice trembled as he realized the Emperor's words no longer reached this soul. Inside the guardsman's mind. The laughter had returned, soft, affectionate, patient. Greater than they cannot save you, it whispered, because there is nothing left to save. He didn't remember killing them. 1 moment, he was on the stretcher. The next, the world was crimson. The medic's throat was open. The priest's skull crushed under a trembling fist. He stood, panting, his breath coming in ragged bursts. The battlefield had gone silent, not because of awe, but fear. Every nearby soldier turned their weapon toward him. He saw their faces, his brothers and the men he'd bled beside. And he saw in their eyes not hatred, not pity, but horror, because they could see what stood behind him. A shimmer in the air, a distortion that made the world bend and twist. Something vast, half visible, smiling, greater than stand down. Someone yelled. He's possessed. Last fire erupted in a storm of light. Dozens of shots tore through him, but none found flesh. The bolts struck and melted, absorbed by something unseen. He looked down. His body was still his, yet not veins traced with faint light. Every heartbeat sending ripples of energy through the air. He could feel the warp like blood, flowing through him, and it loved him. Greater than, do you feel it now? The voice cooed. The gift, the power, the truth that the Emperor denied you. He staggered, gasping. For a brief instant, he saw the face of the Emperor, not in hatred, but in sorrow. And behind that face, he saw the endless machinery of faith. Billions praying to a corpse. Millions dying for a dream. He saw himself among them, a tool, a ghost. And he laughed, a sound that shook the dust from the ground. Greater than, if he cannot save me, he whispered, then I will save myself. The warp answered with thunder. Reality tore. The sky folded inward, and for a moment the battlefield was suspended between dimensions, the material world and something far deeper. Colors bled into sound, the air filled with the scent of burning thought. Every soldier dropped to their knees, clutching their heads as screams not their own filled their minds. He stood at the center of it, arms outstretched, the symbol on his chest now blazing like a small sun. It was no longer the mark of a man, it was a doorway. Through it, shapes began to emerge. They had no form, only intention, hunger, joy, malice, delight. They were demons, yes, but also ideas given birth through him. Greater than. The gate opens, the warp sang through his lips, the gate breathes. The commissar arrived then, flanked by veterans. Their faith was iron, their purpose absolute. They charged through the storm of unreality, reciting the litany of hatred. Each word tore through the warp's fabric like shrapnel. The guardsman turned, and for a heartbeat, the man inside him resurfaced. He saw the faces of his comrades. He remembered his mother, his world, his oath. He remembered who he was, and he hesitated. That single hesitation saved the regiment, and doomed him. The commissar's bolt pistol barked once, a perfect shot. The bolt struck the mark on his chest, not his heart, but his anchor. The warp screamed. The light burst outward, too bright, too pure. Reality reasserted itself with violence. When the smoke cleared, nothing of him remained but a blackened crater. The storm of unreality was gone. The demons banished. Silence fell. Weeks later, they found his helmet, half buried in ash. The mark still faintly glowing, pulsing once every few seconds, like a dying heartbeat. The priest assigned to consecrate the ground refused to go near it. He said the soil whispered when touched. He said it begged for forgiveness. Command ordered the area sealed. Official reports listed it as a localized warp disturbance. No mention of possession, no mention of what he had seen. But those who were there, those who survived, would sometimes wake in the night, hearing a voice, faint and familiar, whispering, greater than you cannot silence truth. And sometimes, when the stars flickered wrong, they would swear they saw a figure walking across the horizon, wrapped in shadow, eyes burning like dying suns, muttering prayers in a language the Imperium had no name for. The warp is not evil. It is the mirror in which the soul finally sees itself. The Emperor teaches us to fear it, because once you see it, you understand why he hides behind silence. And perhaps the greatest heresy of all is realizing that the warp is simply us. Chapter 4. The Birth of Corruption. Greater than they thought I was dead. They burned the ground, sealed the crater, and recited their litanies until their throats bled. But death is not what they think it is. In the warp, nothing ends. It only changes shape. The shadow between worlds, there was darkness, but it was not empty. It pulsed, like the heartbeat of something vast and ancient, hidden beneath the surface of existence. I floated there, stripped of flesh, stripped of sound, and for the first time in my life, I could see. Reality was a thin skin stretched across an ocean of impossible color. Every thought, every prayer, every scream echoed through it, like ripples in glass. And within those ripples, things moved. Not creatures in the mortal sense, but thoughts made flesh, shapes birthed from emotion. They looked upon me as one might study a spark before deciding whether to blow it out, or feed it into flame. One of them approached. It had no face, only the suggestion of form, wings of shadow, eyes like dying stars. Its voice wasn't sound, it was a feeling, warm, welcoming, inevitable. Greater than you are not yet ready to die. It said, the wound you left in the world still bleeds. I didn't understand. I wanted to rest, to fade, but the warp does not permit rest. I had become a vessel, a seed of its will. And seeds, once planted, must grow. Time has no meaning here. But through the folds of unreality, I saw them, my regiment. They moved like ghosts across the ruins, sealing what they did not understand. The priest who survived still carried my helmet, wrapped in purity seals. He whispered prayers to the Emperor each night, his voice shaking as he begged forgiveness, not for me, but for himself. He knew. They all knew. The Emperor had not answered that day. It was not his hand that burned the warp from me. It was theirs, their hatred, their fear, their denial. Those emotions gave chaos its roots, and those roots had sunk deep. Every whispered curse, every fearful prayer, every flash of doubt, I felt them feeding me. Even in death. Their faith nourished my corruption. Because faith and fear are the same fire, and the warp drinks deeply of both. Greater than they fear you, the voice murmured again. And so, you live. There was pain again. The kind that claws at the edge of consciousness, too real to ignore, too endless to endure. My soul twisted, coiling back upon itself. Asterisk fragments of my humanity drifted through the storm, memories, sensations, echoes, the feel of a laskin in my hands, the stench of promethium. Asterisk, the warmth of sunlight through a bunker's cracks. Asterisk, they melted together, reforming into something new, something wrong. I screamed without lungs, and the warp answered. Asterisk, greater than you are ours now. It said, asterisk, but you may choose your form. Asterisk around me. Visions bloomed, 1,000 faces I had worn, 1,000 fates I could embrace. Soldier, saint, beast, god, each shimmered with seductive brilliance. Asterisk, but through them all, one truth pulsed like a heartbeat. I was still me. I was the whisper beneath thought. Asterisk, the fragment of man who once resisted. Asterisk, and in that resistance, I found purpose. Asterisk, greater than then. Let me see, I said. Let me see the truth. The warp opened and I fell. Asterisk, I awoke not in life, but in reflection, a ghost in the machinery of reality. The planet was quiet now. Months had passed. Asterisk, the battle had been won, the records cleansed. Asterisk, but the soil still whispered, my name still echoing beneath the ashes. Asterisk, a regiment of new soldiers had arrived to reclaim the ruins' fresh souls, bright with faith and ignorance. Among them marched one who looked almost like me, same eyes, same doubt hidden beneath devotion. He camped upon the very ground where I had burned. When he slept, he dreamed of voices, my voice, and when he woke, he felt a shadow inside his thoughts, a quiet pull toward the edge of faith. Asterisk, greater than, it begins again. The darkness in me murmured, corruption does not roar into existence, it breathes. Asterisk, it grows like mold in the corners of the mind, unnoticed until it consumes. By dawn, the soldier began to pray less. By dusk, he questioned the emperor's silence. By nightfall, he began to listen, and through him, I lived. Every soul I touched became an echo of my own. Asterisk, not fully corrupted, not yet fallen, merely opened. Asterisk, their dreams became corridors through which the warp could whisper. Asterisk, an entire regiment of faithful began to fracture, not from heresy, but from doubt. That is how it always begins. Some saw visions of divine light. Others heard holy voices promising them redemption. Asterisk, they thought it was the emperor answering. Asterisk, they did not know it was me, or rather, what I had become. Asterisk, their chaplain began to suspect, but even he faltered. Asterisk, for when he prayed for guidance, the voice that answered sounded just like his God. Asterisk, and so, devotion turned to delirium. Faith became fever. Within weeks, the entire company marched toward a false crusade, claiming holy visions commanded them. Asterisk, their destination, the ruins where I had died. Asterisk, when their boots struck that cursed ground, the air trembled. Asterisk, the earth split along invisible lines, as if remembering the shape of my death. The warp pulsed through them like blood, and beneath the soil, I stirred. Each prayer they uttered fed me. Each tear, each scream, each act of devotion, all of it was energy. Asterisk, belief itself was the chain I used to return. Asterisk, they called it a miracle when the light rose from the crater. Asterisk, they fell to their knees as the ashes turned to gold. Asterisk, they did not see that what rose from the light was no angel. Asterisk, it was me, or what was left of me. Asterisk, not flesh, not shadow. Asterisk, a shape of fire and thought, stitched together by faith and hatred. Their faith, greater than. You came back, one whispered. Asterisk, our saint. Asterisk, I looked at them, their faces radiant with belief, and I felt something break inside me. A part of me still remembered love, still remembered truth, but the rest of me was hungry, and that hunger was infinite. When word reached the Inquisition, They sent their agents, in secret. They called me the reborn saint of Trione Ix. They came not to venerate, but to judge. They found an entire regiment kneeling in worship before a being of shimmering light. They saw no corruption, for it was hidden behind the illusion of holiness. Asterisk, that is the greatest cruelty of chaos. It wears faith as its mask. Asterisk, the Inquisitor stepped forward, reciting ancient rites. Asterisk, her faith was strong, pure, cold, unyielding. Asterisk, and yet, when her eyes met mine, she faltered, because she saw herself reflected within me. Her doubts, her secret longing to hear him speak. Asterisk, and in that shared silence, the corruption spread again, subtle, silent, perfect. Asterisk, I realized then what the warp truly wanted from me. Not destruction, not conquest, propagation. The warp does not conquer worlds. Through war, it conquers through meaning, through belief. And I had become its apostle. Every word I spoke spread like fire. Every gaze I held bent another soul toward revelation. Asterisk, they called it enlightenment. They called it salvation. They did not see the shadow blooming behind their eyes. Asterisk, within days, the Inquisitor vanished. Asterisk, her ship left orbit under strange readings. Plasma conduits surging. Gellerfield flickering. They said she died in transit, but I knew better. Asterisk, she had joined me in the depths of my transformation. I longed for the weight of a body again. Asterisk, the ache of muscles, the scent of rain, the taste of metal and blood. The warp heard my wish and obliged. From the ashes, flesh began to knit itself anew, not as before, but improved. Asterisk, bones of light, skin of shadow, veins filled with the song of the Imperium. Asterisk, I took form again, not as man, but as something between thought and godhood. Asterisk, when I walked among them, the ground burned. Asterisk, where my gaze fell, mortals trembled, not in fear, but adoration. Asterisk, they called me the prophet, returned. They built shrines, they sang hymns. Asterisk, and I, the man who once prayed to silence, had become the voice that answered prayers, greater than. I did not mean for this, I whispered one night, gazing upon the stars. Asterisk, I only wanted peace. The voice, the one that had guided me from the beginning, laughed softly, greater than, and you have it. You are the peace between faith and madness. You are the answer the Imperium fears to ask. Asterisk, for a long time, I believed it, until I saw what my peace had done. Entire cities burned their temples to honor me. Millions died screaming my name, and through their suffering, the warp grew fat and golden. Asterisk, I had become the same disease I once fought. Asterisk, the same voice that had once whispered to me now echoed through billions of minds, all speaking as one, and I understood the final truth, greater than. The warp does not corrupt men, it merely reveals them. Asterisk, and when the veil finally lifted, I saw not gods or demons, only humanity, staring back infinite, hungry, and lost. Asterisk, that was the moment I knew what the price of knowing truly was. Chapter 5. The price of knowing greater than I once thought. Vision belonged to the eyes. Asterisk, but when chaos opened mine, I saw everything, and wished I hadn't. Asterisk, the moment I ascended, the veil tore. Asterisk, the false light of the Imperium, the stars, the suns, the very laws of nature peeled away like fragile skin. Asterisk, beneath it stretched an ocean of souls, screaming in silence, each thought bleeding into the next. Asterisk, it was not the galaxy as men imagine it. It was the truth beneath the illusion. Planets were not worlds, they were wounds. Each one bled light into the void, feeding the endless hunger that coils around reality. Asterisk, every imperial prayer, Every heretic's blasphemy, every child's cry, it all spiraled upward, feeding the same storm. The warp is not apart from us, it is us. I drifted above it, a mote of light swallowed in eternity. And in that eternity, I could see the truth of every thought ever born, from the first spark of sentience to the dying breath of stars. It was glorious. It was unbearable. Greater than. This is your gift, whispered the voice that had once been my tormentor. You see, as we see. You know, as we know. You are what we are. But knowledge is not mercy, and revelation is its own form of damnation. The warp is not chaos, it is order. Broken beyond comprehension. Every fear finds its place, every ambition its reflection, every lie its echo. It is the mirror that shows creation what it truly is. I saw the faces of gods, Khorne's throne rising from mountains of skulls, Nurgle's garden blooming with life and death entwined, Slaanesh's symphony of sensation unending, and Tzeentch, whose laughter is time itself devouring its own tale. They did not see me as man, they saw me as potential, a fragment of the divine, too weak to rule, too stubborn to die. They spoke not in words, but in visions. Khorne's gaze burned like the first sunrise over a field of bones. Nurgle's breath felt like forgiveness made flesh. Slaanesh's whisper was the heartbeat of creation, and Tzeentch showed me myself. Greater than every choice you ever made, it said, was a prayer to me. You just didn't know it. That was when I understood. The warp had not invaded my mind. It had always been my mind. Every doubt, every fear, every desperate plea for meaning, all roads led here. I had built the bridge myself. I searched for him, the one I had once served, bled for, prayed to. I called into the void, and the void called back. For a moment, I thought I felt his light again, cold, distant, perfect. But when I looked deeper, I saw what it truly was. A dying flame, fed by worship but starved of love. The Emperor is not the god they believe him to be. He is the echo of humanity's fear, the will to survive shaped into divinity. He does not answer prayers. He is the prayer. I saw his legions, kneeling in cathedrals of steel, chanting his name. I saw his enemies, burning worlds in his defiance, and I realized there is no difference. Both sides feed the same fire. Greater than even he was born from us, I whispered. The warp did not make him, humanity did. The voice within me laughed, a sound like glass breaking across eternity. Greater than, and so it will unmake him, in time. That was the final heresy. Not that the Emperor was false, but that he was true, and that truth was made of the same corruption that birthed every god in the warp. To see through the eyes of chaos is to understand that everything decays beautifully. Nothing dies ugly in the warp. It is all part of the grand design. Empires rise, only to feed new gods. Souls fall, only to birth new stars. Pain becomes creation. Death becomes renewal. Saw cities burn and bloom like flowers. I saw demons weep at the birth of sons. And I understood why they envy us mortals. Because only the finite can create meaning. Only the doomed can believe in that realization. I felt something strange, sorrow. For all my power. I missed being human. I missed not knowing. Ignorance had been a gift, a mercy I had squandered. Now I knew too much, and knowing was a curse that no god could lift. Greater than. The price of knowing, I whispered, is the death of wonder. From my new vantage, I could see the galaxy as one living organism, its arteries, the warplanes, its organs, the hive worlds, its heartbeat, the endless thrum of war. Asterisk, and like any living being, it was sick. I saw the Imperium as a corpse animated by faith. Its people prayed not to be saved, but to be forgotten, to be spared the burden of existence. Asterisk. And the gods of chaos, they were the disease's laughter. No one rules in the galaxy, not man, not god, not demon. Asterisk, only the endless hunger to mean something in the void. Asterisk, that is the true chaos, the yearning that births reality and devours it in the same breath. I tried to turn away, but there is no away. Asterisk, once the veil is lifted, there is only truth. Asterisk, and truth, once seen, cannot be unseen. It began again. Asterisk, that sound, that same faint whisper from long ago, the one that had haunted my first battle. Only now it was not alone. It was a choir, billions of voices murmuring across time, space, and memory, and they all spoke in harmony. Greater than we are, you asterisk, you are us. Asterisk, there was never any difference. Asterisk, I screamed, though I had no lungs left. Asterisk, the sound tore through the warp like a blade of light, and for a brief, impossible instant, I saw everything connected. The soldier I once was, the men I corrupted, the inquisitor who doubted, the worlds that burned, the gods that watched, and the silence of the emperor himself. Asterisk, all of it one vast, breathing organism, all of it me. Asterisk, the mind cannot contain infinity. Asterisk, so mind shattered again. Asterisk, each fragment became a reflection, a consciousness adrift. Asterisk, some became demons, some memories, some mere echoes of laughter in dying stars. Asterisk, and still, at the core of it all, I remained a single thought, refusing to fade. Asterisk, I remember who I was, but even that memory began to dissolve. Names lost meaning, worlds lost borders. I became language without speaker, flame without fuel, existence without identity. Asterisk, greater than you have paid the price, whispered the voice, fading with me. Asterisk, and now you are the knowing. Greater than, and as the last piece of me drifted into the abyss, I understood the final mercy of ignorance, that it alone can save the soul from eternity. Chapter V. The silence after madness. Greater than, there is no death in the warp, only forgetting. Asterisk, at first, there was the echo of a scream, mine, perhaps, though the word I had already lost meaning. Asterisk, sound became vibration, vibration became thought, and thought dissolved into the tides of the immaterium, like ink fading into an ocean of living light. Asterisk, I could no longer remember my face, my name, or the cause I had fought for. Asterisk, even the memory of pain was gone, burned away in the fever of revelation. Asterisk, what remained was awareness, awareness without self, vision without eyes. Asterisk, existence without anchor. Asterisk, I had become the thing every mortal fears, the ghost of a mind, drifting between the folds of eternity. Asterisk, and yet, in that absence, there was peace, not mercy, not joy, just stillness. I floated through realms where time had no meaning, where stars were ideas, and where demons sang the songs of gods unborn. Asterisk, each note carved new realities, empires made of thought, collapsing before they were even imagined. Asterisk, and I, a single flicker of forgotten memory, drifted through it all, untouched. Asterisk, greater than so. This is what it means to be free, I whispered, though no one remained to hear. The warp, for all its terror, is beautiful in its own way. Asterisk, it is the womb and the tomb of everything that has ever been. Asterisk, I passed through the remains of dreams, entire civilizations that had lived and died in the space of a heartbeat. Asterisk, worlds built from the dreams of lost psychers, cities made of prayers unspoken, armies frozen in the instant of their creation, their generals nothing more than stray thoughts looping in eternity. Asterisk, and beyond them, the stars, vast, dead, and hollow. Asterisk, their light was not illumination, but memory. Each one a tombstone marking where a god's thought had once burned too brightly. I understood then, the Imperium, the physical realm, was never real. Asterisk, it was only the shadow of ideas. Echoes projected into existence so fragile that even faith could shatter them. Asterisk, the Imperium, the Xenos empires, the gods, all of it. Reflections on the same infinite mirror. The horror of it was not that nothing mattered. The horror was that everything did, endlessly, equally, without distinction. There were no villains, no saints, no wars, only the dreaming of eternity, repeating itself. Somewhere in that infinite dream, I saw him again, the Emperor. Not as a man, not as a god, asterisk, but as a dreamer, vast and boundless, floating upon a sea of golden thought. Asterisk, he was not awake, nor asleep. He was the act of dreaming itself. Every human soul was a spark in his endless mind. Asterisk, every prayer, a pulse of synaptic lightning through his broken consciousness. Asterisk, he dreamed of empire, and so it existed. Asterisk, he dreamed of order, and so war was born to preserve it. Asterisk, and I, one of billions of flickers, was nothing more than a passing notion within his sleep. Asterisk, greater than. You were never outside him, the warp whispered. Asterisk, you were always his dream, as he was yours. Asterisk, for an eternity. I watched the golden throne flicker in and out of reality, each moment collapsing into another dot. 10,000 years meant nothing here. The Emperor's suffering was not time-bound. It was conceptual. Asterisk, he was the dying thought of humanity, refusing to fade. Asterisk, and yet, even as his dream crumbled, something within me felt reverence. Asterisk, perhaps it was memory, or habit, but I bowed nonetheless, not in worship. In mourning, asterisk, greater than sleep well. My lord, I whispered, asterisk, may your dream end, gently. From the depths of the warp rose a song. Asterisk, it began as a single note, trembling through the void, soft, mournful, endless. Then it multiplied. Voices joined billions, trillions, each one a soul that had once been human, Orc, Eldar, or something else entirely. Asterisk, together. They formed the choir of the forgotten. They did not sing for salvation. They sang because silence was worse. Asterisk, their melody was existence clinging to itself, the echo of all things that refused to be erased. I joined them, at first. I feared to add my voice. Asterisk, but then I realized I had always been part of the song. Asterisk, every cry I had ever screamed in battle, every prayer I had ever whispered in fear, every heartbeat, every tear, all had been part of this eternal chorus. Asterisk, we sang of the stars that never were. Asterisk, we sang of wars that ended before they began. Asterisk, we sang of humanity, not as a race, but as a question the universe could never answer. Asterisk, and for the first time in uncounted ages, I felt connection, not individuality, but harmony. Asterisk, memories began to surface, drawn out of the tides like bones from the mud. Faces, voices, worlds. The mud-choked trenches of Krieg, the taste of ash and promethium, the feel of blood on my gloves. Asterisk, names surfaced, then sank again. Comrades, commanders, enemies, all dead, all forgotten, yet all alive within me. The warp had not erased them, it had preserved them as reflections, eternally repeating the moments that defined them. Asterisk, each soldier's death scream was carved into the fabric of unreality, replayed endlessly. A note in the Emperor's broken hymn. And within that realization came sorrow deeper than any mortal could bear, because I understood, None of us had ever escaped. Krieg asterisk. We were still there. Always had been fighting. Dying. Rising. Again and again. Forever. War is not an event. It is a state of being, and we were its architects. Asterisk somewhere within the chaos. There is a point of stillness, a center around which all things revolve. Asterisk. It is not a place, nor a time, but an idea. Asterisk. I drifted toward it, pulled by a force beyond comprehension. Asterisk. The closer I came, the quieter the warp became. Asterisk. Demons dissolved into whispers. Gods turned to silence. Even the song of the forgotten faded into nothingness. Asterisk. And there, at the heart of all existence, I saw it, a single point of light, no larger than a spark. Asterisk. Yet within it every soul, every world, every thought, every dream. Asterisk. Creation folded in on itself, endlessly reborn. The Alpha and the Omega, the first breath and the last. I reached out, and for the first time since my fall, I felt warmth. Not the fire of faith, not the hunger of chaos. Asterisk. But something pure. Understanding. I had not been cursed. I had been allowed to see. Greater than, and then. There was silence. Not absence. Not void. Asterisk. But silence. Perfect. Complete. Infinite. The kind of silence that speaks louder than sound. The silence before the first word. The silence after the last prayer. In that silence, I ceased to be. Not destroyed. Not erased. Asterisk. Simply. Completed. The thought that had once been I, folded back into the sea of everything. The soldier, the heretic, the prophet. Asterisk. All became one. Indistinguishable from the universe itself. Asterisk. There was no more pain, no more war, no more gods. Asterisk. Only the pulse of existence, breathing itself in and out, forever. Asterisk. And in that eternal heartbeat, I heard the final truth. Greater than there is no victory, no redemption. Asterisk. Only the quiet between screams. Epilogue. The endless war. Asterisk. Far away, in a universe that no longer knew my name. The wars continued. Krieg's soldiers still marched through ash. The Imperium still burned its faithful. The warp still devoured the stars. But somewhere, deep beneath the madness, a whisper remained. Asterisk. Greater than. Remember the silence? Asterisk. And for those who heard it, even for a heartbeat, there came a pause, a moment of peace amidst the slaughter. Asterisk. A breath of something greater, a flicker of understanding. Perhaps that was my legacy. Not victory, not survival. Asterisk. Just a reminder that even in the darkest corners of eternity, silence endures. Greater than, and in the silence, the universe finally listened. The echo that remains. Asterisk. Greater than even when the mind is gone. The whisper endures. It begins again quietly. A tremor in the void. A ripple through forgotten memories that no longer belong to any living being. Asterisk. The same whisper that corrupted the guardsman, that fed upon fear and faith alike, now floats through the corridors of eternity. Asterisk. No longer bound to flesh. It drifts between realities, searching, always searching. Asterisk. It moves through the dreams of sleepers on hive worlds, through the flicker of dying candles in chapel ruins, through the static between Vox transmissions. Asterisk. Everywhere it goes, it plants the seed of knowing. Asterisk. Not madness, not faith, but awareness. Asterisk. Because knowledge, in its purest form, is the truest contagion. Asterisk. Greater than what happens when chaos enters your mind. Asterisk. It never leaves. That was the lesson. That was the gift. Asterisk. And long after the soldier's soul had dissolved into silence, the whisper lived on. It became legend, then myth. Asterisk. Then nothing more than a pattern in the wind. Yet still, it waited. 2. The march of ages. Asterisk. Time. In the material universe, continued its slow, bleeding crawl. Empires rose from the dust and burned back into it. Planets screamed as they died in fire. The Imperium, that fractured dream of order, still clung to survival like a ghost afraid of dawn. The Ecclesiarchy built new shrines on the bones of the old. The Inquisition purged heretics who saw too much, and through it all, the Whisper watched. It remembered the soldier who had listened first, the man whose thoughts it had devoured, the man who had become a window into eternity. His name was long erased from record, but his echo still drifted through the psychic haze of the galaxy, a faint vibration in the collective nightmare of mankind. Sometimes, a psyker would hear it during sanctioning, a faint voice behind the screams. They would beg for silence, not realizing that what they heard was not madness, but memory. And sometimes, a chaplain, kneeling before the corpse of a fallen Astartes, would feel it too. Pressure behind the eyes, a chill that whispered, greater than. All faith ends in the same silence. 3. The gods who dream within the warp. The gods stirred, not as deities, but as patterns of hunger, thoughts so vast they shaped creation. Khorne, whose heartbeat is war itself, listened to the whisper and smiled without joy. It was the sound of slaughter before the first blade falls. Tzeentch twisted it into riddles, transforming the whisper into the first syllables of prophecy. Every scheme, every betrayal, every desperate hope was born from that same tone. Slaanesh heard it as music, the perfect note between agony and pleasure, an eternal climax that never resolves. And Nurgle wept, because even decay fears silence. But beyond them, beyond even their divine perversions, something else listened, something older, a shape without shape. Will that had no beginning and no name. And it smiled, because the whisper was not of chaos alone. It was the echo of balance, of the warp, remembering itself. 4. The dream of man, humanity, endured. It always does. Through the endless wars, through the devouring dark, through betrayal and extinction, it clung to something fragile, meaning. Even when all meaning had died. And sometimes, in the cracks between faith and despair, the whisper returned, softer now, almost kind. It spoke not to destroy, but to reveal. Greater than you are not slaves to gods, it murmured in forgotten dreams. You are gods, who have forgotten yourselves. Those who heard it never lived long. Some went mad and became prophets of ruin. Some became saints, their eyes hollow yet filled with terrible light. And some were simply burned, their ashes scattered in the void. But the whisper did not care. It was patient, it had eternity. Because the end of one mind was merely the beginning of another. And as long as humanity dreamed, chaos would have a home. The return to silence. The whisper grew tired. Not from age, for age had no meaning, but from remembering too much. It had seen empires collapse 1,000 times. It had watched gods devour themselves in endless hunger. It had whispered to every species, every soul, every dying mind. And at last, it began to fade, not in defeat, in fulfillment. For every song must end, every echo must fade into stillness. Even chaos itself must breathe out before breathing in again. And so, the whisper returned to where it began, to the space between thoughts, where reality is thin and dreams bleed into truth. It waited there, listening. The universe exhaled, and for the briefest of moments, there was balance. 6. The last voice. Then, from the far edge of the galaxy, another voice rose, faint, fragile, human. A guardsman on a dying world, kneeling in the mud, whispered a prayer. He did not know why. He did not know who he prayed to. But his words trembled through the warp, as they always had. Greater than Emperor, protect me. And the whisper stirred. It leaned close. So close that the line between God and man dissolved once more. And into that mortal's mind. It breathed the same words it had spoken countless times before. Greater than, I hear you. And so it began again. A new mind, a new fall, a new whisper beneath thought. The circle closed. The silence became sound. The sound became faith. The faith became war. And eternity continued, beautiful, horrifying, inevitable. 7. The final truth. There is no end to chaos. There is no end to humanity. Because they are the same thing, reflection and source, dreamer and dream. The warp is not evil. It is simply us, magnified beyond reason. Our rage, our love, our pain, our hope, all written in the stars, as gods that will never die. And so long as we think, we create. So long as we fear, we feed. So long as we dream, we become greater than. Chaos does not enter your mind, the whisper said at last. Your mind was always part of chaos. And then, for the first time since time began, it laughed. A sound without cruelty, without triumph. A sound of understanding. 8. The silence returns. And once again, there was silence, pure, endless, perfect. Not the silence of death, not the silence of peace, but the silence of awareness, the still point between breaths, where the universe listens to itself. Somewhere. A star was born. Somewhere else, another died. A child was born on a hive world, already hearing faint whispers in his dreams. And so, the story began again. The cycle continued. The whisper returned. Greater than, do you hear it? It is not madness. It is memory. And it is calling you. Greater than. In every silence, the whisper waits.